Hi, this is Emily F., Emily K., and Maddie here to discuss George Orwell's 1984, Section 3. Um, we'll start off with the summary. Take it away, Emily.
Okay, so in this section, we start off with them meeting in the country like they had planned previous. So Winston finds out many things about Julia, like her name is Julia, and she has brown eyes. So they talk, and he finds out that her whole junior anti-sex league and like her whole like love of the party is an act, and she really just rebels. And then they make love, which is an act of rebellion. They meet several more times. So Julia doesn't care about the party unless it involves her. She really likes to out with the party, and she thinks that the party is very like against sex for enjoyment is because it's channeled into aggression. Winston tells Julia about how he almost killed his wife, and then he talks about how he thinks it's like impossible to win against the party because they're just so big. And then Winston rents a room from above the secondhand shop for his affair. They meet several times. In one instance, Julia has real sugar, coffee, and bread. Winston thinks about living inside the paperweight with Julia and how he wouldn't have to worry about anything. So then we find out that Simi vanishes, just like Winston had predicted. And everyone is preparing for Hate Week. And Winston imagines a life with Julia where they don't have to worry about the party. Julia believes that the war and Goldenstein are made up and she doesn't care, and Winston is shocked because that had never crossed his mind before. O'Brien and Winston talk, and O'Brien gives Winston his address in a clever way. Winston thinks about how he's going to die soon because the party is going to find him and kill him. Winston, he had repressed this memory, but after a series of events, he remembers it. He remembers the last time he saw his mom and sister. He was a very greedy child, and he would always eat food even though there wasn't any food. And the last time he saw them, he stole chocolate from his little sister, and then when he went back to the house, they were gone. And then Winston thinks about how he thinks that the Pearls are more human than him because they still feel and they aren't under control. Then Winston and Julia talk about how no matter what, even if they're tortured, the party can never take away how they love each other. And then they both go to O'Brien's house, and then they learn about how awful the party is and how there's a rebellion that's led by Goldstein. Winston is going to receive a book all about the rebellion and the Brotherhood. So O'Brien tells him the missing verse from St. Clement's Church rhyme. And then when Winston leaves, O'Brien goes back to doing the party's work, like his job. The end.
So we'll start off with the rhetorical analysis of this passage. Winston did not get up for a few minutes more. The room was darkening. He turned over toward the light and lay gazing into the glass paperweight. The inexhaustibly interesting thing was not the fragment of coral, but the interior of the glass itself. There was such a depth of it, and yet it was almost as transparent as air. It was as though the surface of the glass had been the arch of the sky, enclosing a tiny world with its atmosphere complete. He had the feeling that he could get inside it, and that in fact he was inside it, along with the mahogany bed and the gate-leg table and the clock and the steel engraving and the paperweight itself. The paperweight was the room he was in, and the coral was Julia's life and his own, fixed in a sort of eternity at the heart of the crystal. So first we'll discuss that the speaker is Winston, I guess. No debates about that. The audience is the readers, and the subject is, well, this is kind of a metaphor for the room and how he feels when he's in the room with Julia. Like the glass of the paperweight would be the room, and then the crystal inside of it is him and Julia. The glass, it just looks smooth and peaceful and serene, and it's a relic from the past, and that's how he feels when he's in this room that's been untouched by the party. And he and Julia are just enclosed in it and feel safe. So, the pathos, I feel like this brings out a lot of pathos. What do you guys think?
I think it does a lot because I think the metaphor was really well chosen here, and the paperweight and how you saw because like he went there first for the diary and then for the paperweight, and you kind of saw how like that grew into something else, and like he saw more and more meaning within this like paperweight as he like had more and more of a relationship with Julia, and it kind of helped. It's a good metaphor for their relationship.
I also think it's like a metaphor for the reader because like you like heard like you like read about the paperweight earlier and you're like, oh, that's cool, but like I don't like, what does a paperweight have to do with anything? And then you read this and you're like, oh, it's like a metaphor. And I think like the reader like connects with this passage because they feel sorry for Winston and Julia, that like they can't like be together and like be in like a safe place, that they are like in like with a party and stuff.
Yeah, and I also feel like, feel free to disagree with me on this, but I feel like the paperweight kind of almost represents his peace of mind at this point. Like, if anything, like I can see if anything happens to the paperweight in the story, then things are just gonna go downhill. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
just gonna start falling
I think
apart.
it's like definitely his like place of mind like in the room because it's like smooth and stuff, and he just like feels like safe like in the room, like he can forget about the party. Also like it's glass, so I feel like if it like going with your metaphor, like if it broke, then you know that like things are about to go down.
Yeah, like you kind of said that point, but like it is the fact that it is made out of glass and it is such like a fragile like piece of like just like almost art. It's just like it shows like how fragile his like relationship with Julia is, and how like at any point it could break, and like just by the wrong move.
Also like a paperweight, like it doesn't really like have like a point to it anymore because they don't like really like have a lot of like papers and stuff, so it's kind of like meaningless in a way, and just kind of like you could kind of say like his like him and like Julia, like their affair is kind of like meaningless in the grand scheme of things, because like Winston, his view is that like, oh, like no matter what, like the party's just gonna be there, and like there's something we can do, and that's really his point of view too.
So let's talk about the style of this and tone of this passage. I mean, it's just kind of like an internal monologue that he's having,
Mhm.
and it's just really descriptive and really emotional, which kind of lends towards the metaphor being that this is how he feels when he's in the room.
Yeah, he's definitely like put a lot of thought to this. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's sort of a stream of consciousness, but you can tell he's like thought of this before, and like he's like, you can see how he's growing this own metaphor in his own head about this paperweight.
Yeah, you can definitely like see like all his thoughts like in his mind are like reflected in like the paperweight and like the metaphor, and like he kind of like puts his thoughts into it.
So the logos in this, I think it's just that everything is really fragile in his life right now. The only piece that he has in this room is really fragile, like glass. It can break at any moment, like we talked about before.
Yeah, like the logic in it, you can tell like there was a lot of thought put in. I mean, like the author also put a lot of thought into this metaphor, and he found a great way to like entwine this into it, and like you can tell like the reader, even if they're not even looking for that, you can see the metaphor for it and like how logically it fits into the story.
Yeah, I just think this entire passage like it's very descriptive and like a metaphor, but it's still like very logical in the way that he describes it, and it's like very clear to the reader what he means.
Okay, so for ethos, I think he pretty much is the only one that has authority over how he feels and his own emotions.
Because that's like the one thing the party can't take away
Yeah.
from him.
So he knows how he feels, and he uses a metaphor to describe to himself and to the readers what that is. Ethos.
Yeah.
So we'll first be discussing the character, and we'll be talking about three characters, Winston, Julia, and O'Brien. Winston is still motivated by his want to rebel from the party, but we also learned a little more about him, like when he was a kid and he was a brat, and he was basically really selfish. He said that he remembered having to hide out in bunkers from air raids or whatever, and they didn't really have that much food, and they had a little bit of chocolate, and he just took all the chocolate for himself because
though his
he
sister
wanted
was
it.
sick.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
sister was dying, and his mother obviously was like very unselfish and gave him extra food already.
and she was probably hungry.
And she
And
kept
so-
trying to get him to like stop doing it, but he just wouldn't. That seems way different from his character now, though.
Yeah.
To me.
You kind of almost lose a little bit of respect, like, because he
Yeah.
was doing that. But you gotta remember how, like, small of a child he was.
Yeah.
He was probably, like, I believe they said when his mother disappeared, he was, like, 10.
Yeah, 10 or 12.
So, I mean, that gives it some more context, but still, like, as a child,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he said he didn't know why he was doing it. He didn't understand. Like he wanted to stop, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
He was just really hungry all the time.
I mean, hangry is a real thing. So.
I just think, like, I don't think he, like, really understood what was going on and, like, why, like, he couldn't have food. Like, he's just like, why don't we have any? Like, he probably, because, you know, children don't really understand what was, like, going on. So, yeah, and then, like, his mother couldn't really explain. And he's like, I just want food. Like, that's all he cared about because that's, like, one of our basic needs. So I understand that, like, wanting food.
I think that passage kind of played on, like, a lot of pathos because you kind of, like, felt bad for him because he didn't really understand his situation and, like, he was hungry and, like, blah, blah, blah. But then again, he was, like, taking candy away from a baby.
Yeah.
So there was a
Literally.
lot of conflict there, so.
Yeah, and then his sister, like, was just casually dying and not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming she was younger than him.
I believe she
Yeah.
was, like, a toddler or, like, newborn.
Yeah, she was, like,
Yeah.
a child.
And I felt really bad for her.
Yeah.
Like, that pathos as well. Like, he was, like, he understood that she was dying, but he still didn't. Just felt really, really
Also,
bad
I
for
feel
her.
really bad for his mom because first of all, like her husband is just like gone. She has a sick girl who's like dying soon, and like her son is so greedy, and like
Yeah.
she can't provide for them.
And then they just disappear. Like, he
Yeah.
leaves one day
Yeah.
with the chocolate, and then he never sees them again. Like, I wonder if they're
That's like an
actually
awful
dead.
last memory of
Like,
them.
he said that they
though.
could be in, like, forced labor camps, or,
Yeah.
like, his sister could have just been left somewhere and died, or they could have been killed, or just
Yeah.
taken.
And, like, reading about this, like, you just kind of, like, he was like, yeah, I came back and they were gone, and it was a common occurrence, so, like, it was almost like he almost, like, didn't even, like, it was a horrible memory, but, like, he didn't make it seem that it was that horrible. He's like, oh, yeah, my mom and sister disappeared, and they might have been sent off to forced labor camps or killed, big deal, but it was just, I feel like that also shows how much, like, the party has been rushing off on these people and how, like, these horrific things are happening and they just act like it's
Yeah,
no big
it's
deal.
normal for them.
Yeah.
So now we'll talk about Julia. Oh, Julia. So her character turned out to be way different than we thought it would be in the last section. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, she definitely, like, we got this, like, military view of her, and, like, we thought she was super, like, serious, and then, we began to learn other things about Julia.
Like I thought that she was like much more like serious about like rebelling against the party, but like her idea of rebelling against the party is just to like have sex because the party's very against sex.
And she doesn't even believe, like, the war is even happening.
Mhm.
Like, she believes that, like, all the bombs that are going off are, like, just
I can
the
see that,
government.
though.
I could also see that, but I also think the fact that, like, I think Winston also, since he's, like, so much older, he, like, remembers, like, the actual war going on, and he, obviously,
Yeah.
as a child, he, like, suffered a lot from that. And so I think he believes in it, but, like, I also think it's very plausible that the war could have ended years ago.
Yeah, like her motivation is more the fact that she just wants to do what she wants to do and not be hindered by the party, rather than like Winston want everyone to be free from the party and trying to figure out like why they're doing this. and
Like
that.
she doesn't really care that like wars are going on or that like people are being lied to. She's like she just kind of like wants to have sex. So I think it's really interesting because like her idea of rebellion and Winston's are like kind of different but similar. Like they both want to rebel on the fact that like they want to like have sex because that's like against the party, but Winston is like more than that because he wants like the entire like everybody to be free like you said, and he wants the party to be gone and he wants it to be destroyed, which is why he joined the Brotherhood. But then Julia just like wants to have sex and she's content with that as long as the party like doesn't really control her.
Yeah, like there was the one line in the book where it like perfectly summarizes Julia, where it says Winston tells her you're only a rebel from the waist down, and she completely agreed. So
I think it's interesting that like he wants to do like a lot of rebellion and he's more in he wants to rebel more than she does, and for different reasons, but he does. And it took him so long to build up to this point and start rebelling, and then she's been doing it forever. Like, well, not forever, but for a long time. Like literally, like Winston asks her, how many people have you done this with? And she was like, a lot. And he was just really excited about that because that means that more people are rebelling, but she just likes that because it's for herself and what she wants to do.
I think it's really interesting just like because first of all there is like an age gap, like Winston's like 39 and then she's like 26, which like is fine, but I think it's interesting because normally like young people are more about the like revolution and they're like, yeah, let's like take over like the government stuff, but like middle-aged people are more like, no, like these things take time, like slowly, but like their roles are kind of reversed in that sense, which I thought was interesting. But then again, Winston like